Shalom, Rukuba. We didn't finish yesterday, so we're gonna finish out today. But we're going through the
Round two.
Talmudic dilemma and the sources of the Qur'an. So,
Nice. Let's do it.
how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, doing good. Less technical issues. So fingers crossed. Everything is all good.
Nice. All right. Do you want to hop into it, or do you want to give a breakdown of what we talked about yesterday?
Sure. I'm gonna give a breakdown. So for those of you who are not familiar, we have the Islamic dilemma, and it's the relationship between the Quran in particular, but not exclusively, but a big emphasis on the Quran, and the previous scriptures that the Quran confirms, that mostly being the Torah and the Gospels. Now, what's really interesting is what Chris has done here is he's actually looked at the Talmud, realized that the Quran itself quotes from the Talmud, pretty much, almost one for one, a direct quote, and clearly draws inspiration from the Talmud in many different ways. And it's not just the Quran, it's other sources as well. And because of this, there's a really difficult relationship that the Quran has with the rabbinic commentaries. The relationship with the Quran, the oral law, the commentaries on the oral law is a difficult one because it looks like the Quran actually thinks that that's scripture and it thinks that that's inspired. So it's not written by rabbis who are writing about scripture. Rather, what the rabbis are writing about scripture is scripture, according to the Quran, which puts it in a really difficult position of having to basically say the Talmud is inspired, and also having to connect that to previous prophets in some way. But there was a period where there was no prophets between Jesus and Muhammad, according to Islamic belief, and you can find that in the Quran. And therefore, it seems really hard, given that the Talmud was primarily written during that period. How on earth can it be inspired then? Because there were no prophets during that period from Jesus to Muhammad. So how did the rabbis write the Talmud and it's inspired? It kind of doesn't make any sense. And for that reason, I think Chris is right when he says that there is a Talmudic dilemma. There's a real problem that the Quran has confirming the Talmud when, it's not actually scripture, and it's definitely not without error. So it looks like the Quran is a human work after all.
Indeed. You gave a significantly better rundown than what David did.
Was David just like, yeah, it's something to do with the Talmud? And
yeah.
I don't know.
Pretty much. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we went over yesterday. And the problem becomes obvious whenever you look at examples. So we didn't get to look at many examples yesterday, really none at all, other than Surah 532. Then I mentioned several. But today we're going to go through just example after example after example to really beat people over the head of how much stuff is stolen. So this is, again, the Chris's addition to the Talmudic dilemma.
I like how I have my own version.
Yesterday. Nice. You do. David has gotten 2.5 versions so far. Bob got his own. And my friends also, whenever I streamed with them, they got their own too. He helped me make the slides prettier. So, but this is the full notes for the book. So the book is going to be based on this document here. I'm going to have all of the content of the book available for free on the internet on 2 different websites. But if you want it all compact and in one laid out format, the book will be the easiest place to read that at. But I don't want to gatekeep this behind a paywall because I want everyone in the third world to be able to get access to this information and share it, and let's, Islam end in our lifetime. So that is, hopefully the book will be done this year. We'll see. And that's my YouTube if you care to watch the other videos I've made on it or the other streams. But I also do Bible studies and other cool things. So I'm not going to go through the argument again. Here's the syllogism. If you want to take a picture of it, I will turn the comments off real quick. So this is pretty much the argument, and then these are the conclusions. Basically, Islam is false. Like, this is human tradition, therefore Islam is false. So if you want to go through the stream yesterday, feel free. if you missed it. Otherwise, we're going to jump straight into part 3. Do you have any questions or comments before we jump into the parallels?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Let's jump into it. Let's start.
All right. So first off, the words that they use to describe their religion are mostly Aramaic and Syriac, including the Quran. The Quran is a loan word, and masjid, and the madrasa. The madrasa is literally the school for teaching Talmud in the Jewish system. So they're using terms that are not like, Semitic cognates that you would just naturally expect. Like, for example, yom and yom is day and day. I played this game with my Arabic speaking friends of, okay, what language am I speaking? And I give a word in Hebrew that has basically the exact cognate in Arabic. Hey, oh, it's Arabic. I'm like, nope, that's Hebrew. And then I'll keep doing that until they eventually guess Hebrew. Then I'll say, nope, that was Arabic. So it's a fun way to mess with people. So you have that in these languages, but you also have these specific terms like Jahannam, which comes from Gehennom. And this doesn't come from the Greek, it doesn't come from the New Testament where Jesus uses Gehenna. It's coming specifically from the Hebrew because you have this M at the end. That M is not in the Greek version. So they're using the Jewish version for this term. The Jewish version for this term, shaitan, is exactly the same. It's just the shaitan. And some of these are like the ideas are the same, but they're not exactly the same word. But most of these are just like straight up the same word. And then this is not a exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. Author Jeffries wrote a whole book going through the Syriac and Aramaic influences on the Quran. The Quran is not in pure Arabic. It like hundreds or even thousands that are words that are debated on whether or not it's Arabic or not Arabic. You have Persian words inserted as well, like the word for sajil, for the stones that fall from heaven onto Sodom and Gomorrah. That comes from 2 different words from Persian, sang and gil. So that's literally stone clay. So he combined it together, and it's like petrified stones or like stony clay that's fallen from the heavens, which is also a mix-up in the Quran. That's a mix-up of Joshua, because Joshua, God rains stones from heaven onto the enemies of God, enemies of his army, and then in Sodom and Gomorrah, it's burning sulfur. So he replaces the burning sulfur of Sodom and Gomorrah with the stones of Joshua. So that's another mix-up that most people don't point out. But you have a lot of loan words within the Quran that have theological connotation that Jews and specifically rabbis invented a lot of these. So like masjid and like bet midrash, these are not words that appear in the Bible. These are words that rabbis invented to describe where they worship and where they are teaching at. Same with the Quran for the Kireh or the Kitav, or like there's multiple different ways. The Murka is the same root, which is why this is typically used. We can also get it from the word for reading. So then also God's titles, like the Lord of the Worlds here, Adon Ha'olam, and you have Rab or Alam or Lamin. Rab is the word for Lord, so you just have Adon versus Rab, but then the Alamin is the same. So you have a lot of their theological language is identical to what the Jews of Yemen are using. Like Ar-Rahman, for example, is a Yemeni Jewish title for God that appears in the Talmud, but it's primarily used in Yemen, and his caretaker was a Ethiopic woman, so she would have had the Yemeni influences. So you have like, oh, why did he switch from Ar-Rahman to Allah? Because there's God in the Quran, and the people even ask about it, like, hey, why is our God Allah or is our God Ar-Rahman? He's like, oh no, they're the same God. So he confuses his people by switching between these names, but Allah is, as far as I can tell, Arab pagan. It's not Jewish. Ar-Rahman is Jewish, so he switches from a Jewish name to a pagan name. And Allah is not from Eloah. It's not from the Elohim. It's an entirely different root system and structure. So that's one of the original ones, but he probably is getting that from Arab paganism, because you also have Alat and Menuza and Al-Uzza Manat. So you have Allah, and that's the female Allah, So it's the god and the goddess. But anyway, you have all this borrowed theology, including the ideas of like shirk. So associating a partner with God in the Quran is the unforgivable sin in Surah 448. And in Hebrew, it comes from shitef. And it literally means the same thing. Now, this could actually be used to describe a partner in business. Like, hey, that's my business partner, or that's my friend. You could maybe call them a shitef. You likely wouldn't. You would use different terms, but shitef just means to associate yourself with something or someone, or to become a partner in like a business sense. So the Jews considered associating partners with God to become a heretic. So we have in Sanhedrin 38a this word here, for those who can read Hebrew, that's shutef, or shutaf here. And then this is minimum. And this word is the word for heretic, and then that's the word for associating a partner with the law. But he describes, why was Adam made? Adam, the first man, was created on Shabbat Eve at the close of the 6 days of creation. And for what reason was this so? So that the heretics will not be able to say that the Holy One, blessed be, had a partner in the acts of creation. This is also the same passage which we went over last time with the Surah 532. So the idea here of why was Adam made alone, it was to, if you destroy one man, it's used if you destroy the whole world. So there's multiple opinions that are happening in this section, and we get kind of multiple, reasons from it that end up in Islam. So you have in the next section of the tractate that you have this associating a partner with God and the acts of creation specifically. So it's not just idol worship, which idol worship has its own category, which is involved with shirk. But here we have specifically, if you associate a partner with God in the acts of creation, you're all of a sudden a heretic. You are a kafir. And in Sanhedrin 36 or 63a, we also get that anyone who links the name of heaven with something else, euphemism for an idol, is uprooted from the world. So if you do this specifically shataf here, so it's the same word, same root. If you link a name with God, you are uprooted from the world. And this is, kind of mirrored in the Quran, where if you associate a partner with the name of God, like the world shakes. So you have a similar idea, but then you have this category of kafir as well, which also comes from the Jews. So it's kufr versus kafir, but it literally means to deny. You are a denier. You have concealed. So the Jews use it the same way. It means a disbeliever or a denier. And it is used in the Bible, because it's actually a biblical word, to atone and to cover sin, because this is what's happening on Yom Kippur. Well, this idea of a kofar ba ikar is the later rabbinic title of an unbeliever, a heretic, an apostate. So if you commit shitef, you are a kofar. Well, if you commit shirk, you're a kafir. So, pretty fun. Sanhedrin 90a, you have this exact same phrase here. So this is kafir. And why is one punished to the extent for saying that there's no resurrection of the dead derived from the Torah? So you're punished for not believing in the resurrection. What does that sound like? That sounds like the Quran. The sages taught in a Brita, he denied the resurrection of the dead, therefore he will not have a share in the resurrection of the dead, as all measures dispensed by the Holy One, blessed be he, to his people are dispensed measure for measure, i.e. they respond in commensurate with the action. This idea of denying here is the kofar, or it's kafar here. So the kafar here is the denier of the resurrection of the dead. And this is one of the primary things that they're worrying about in the Quran is, the idea of the resurrection appears dozens of places in the Quran. And those who deny the resurrection of the dead, the pagans, they will not be saved. They will be resurrected onto hellfire. And the Jews believe and say the exact same thing. Also, feel free to stop me whenever you have a question or a thought.
I'm just thinking this through. Yeah, well, I mean, just so far, what we're seeing here is that you have clear terms that are not only loan words from rabbinic sources, but you actually have the same idea, either exactly the same or incredibly closely mimicked and it just seems to take it for granted in the Quran. So that would imply that the Quran has heavily. It's not even. It doesn't need to define these things because the audience already knows it. So there's already a rabbinic influence on this that's just not questioned, because why would you need to? The audience already knows this. It already knows, kufa and these kind of terms, and that's why it feels so comfortable in like Surah Al-Ma'idah ayah 32, just to basically quote from a well-known aspect of the Talmud. So yeah, I'm just thinking that through and just processing it all.
Yeah. We had a comment saying that you can't see the screen, so I'll go back so you can see it and take screenshots and pause it. But yeah, someone mentioned also that we shouldn't translate shirk as associating; it should be partnering.
Economicon.
It's the same thing. It's pretty much the same thing. But yeah, I will try to remember to take the chat down, or I can probably hold on. I can make it wide. That makes.
Can you make it super wide? I guess it can only goes like so far, right?
Yeah. No, they don't give you that much control on where it goes. It's not. I wish I could just use OBS through StreamYard. That's such a tedious thing, man.
Yeah.
But I will read it verbatim, so you're not missing out too much. And you can again look up like the sources themselves won't be covered. But so that is the idea behind the theological usage. So a lot of the words that they say, oh, well, you don't know the Arabic, so then therefore you can't know the truth. Well, it's not even Arabic a lot of the time, which is just really funny.
I told you
theological terms.
Like Dr. Was it Yasakadi? He wrote a book where he talked about some of these things, and one of them was the problem of obvious non-Arabic things in the Quran. And he had an explanation as to how he could say it's 100% Arabic. The Quran is 100% pure Arabic, right? According to him. Mm-hmm. And the way he argued for this was so... I love it. It's brilliant. Basically, it wasn't Arabic until the Quran came down. And then at that point, all of it became Arabic. It just sort of got sucked up into Arabic. So it is Arabic. It is 100% Arabic. It's just that it all flipped. So you had like these Syriac words, these Greek words, whatever. No. They just flipped and became pure Arabic. And I was like, oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah. One of the translators, I think it was Pickthall, but one of the Muslim convert translators who was a Christian who like studied Hebrew, he made multiple notes in his translation of, I didn't quite know how to translate some words because I kept getting confused thinking they were Hebrew. He was like, it should be Arabic, but it kept sounding like Hebrew. That was very weird. Yeah.
That's funny.
All right. Would you guys rather not have the chat on the screen? I can take it down if people straight up don't want it. But anyway, so there's at least 4 different languages that are in the Quran. There's Greek for a lot of the names. So any of the names like Jonas, like that ends with the AS, that's Greek. There's Persian, there's Hebrew, there's I guess 5, Syriac, and there's Aramaic. There's at least those 5 languages in the Quran plus Arabic. But the Quran claims to be pure Arabic. So what do you do with that? All right, well, I'll take chat down. Okay. People in both our comment sections are asking for it. I'll take it down. So this one is a lot of fun. The Jacob narrative has over 900 differences between the Quran and the Bible. And every single one of those differences comes from either a Christian or a rabbinic Jew. Mostly through homilies and the Midrash. 900 differences. And it's because he's not actually reading the Bible. And like Surah 12 is one of the longest narratives of any figure in the Quran. And it's all just about Joseph's story. That's why its name is Yunus. It's about Joseph. Or not
Yusuf.
Yunus is Jonah. Yosef.
Yeah.
I mixed up my names. So you have this entire surah about Joseph, and there's 900 differences between the two stories. And all of those differences come from Christians and Jews. I have the Jewish sources here. Joseph Witzman has all of the Syriac Christian sources, and I have all of it in the book. So if you want to read before my book is ready, you can go through Joseph Whitman's PhD thesis, The Syriac Milieu of the Quran, which is free online in PDF, or you can wait for my book, but I have all of the uh, Hebrew sources here, at least a number of them, not necessarily all of them, because this is pretty extensive. But let's go through Jacob's story and Joseph's story piece by piece. So in Bereshit Rabbah, which is the big book of Genesis, is literally what it means. So Rabbah is like large or to increase something. Bereshit is Genesis. It's the first word of the Bible. So this is the big book of Genesis. And this is sometimes called Genesis Rabbah. But this is chapter 91 and paragraph 6. Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you make yourselves conspicuous?" Jacob said to his sons, "You are mighty and you are handsome. Do not enter through one gate and do not stand in one place, so that the evil eye will not have dominion over you." When Jacob's sons came, and each and every one entered through his own gate, and they wrote their names. We are sincere, however, so this is a big pause, like I cut out multiple paragraphs. They're questioning him, like, why did you go through different gates? And they said, "We are sincere, however, this is what our father commanded us to do. Do not enter through one gate." So there are apparently 12 gates to the cities, and they entered each through a different gate. And then Joseph would read the gates logs, because you would have to write your name down whenever you went through a gate, which is realistic. But so he was reading all these logs for these different gates. He's like, "Oh, that's my brother's name. Oh, that's a brother's name. That's a brother's name." So he's like, "Oh, my brothers are here." So then he went and sent his guards, and they like wrestled him up. But there's this idea of like, why did he not want them to go through one gate? Because this isn't in the Bible whatsoever. The idea of don't go through multiple gates is not biblical. The idea of the evil eye is also not biblical. The evil eye is a very common Jewish iconography. So if you ever see the Jewish blue eye, or the hand that has like the finger growing out that way, and then there's an eye in the middle and it's blue, that's the evil eye. They believe that the evil eye is whenever you look at someone with jealousy, envy, or lust, you are damaging them spiritually / physically. So if I, look at Chris and go, that is going to damage his soul.
Wait. Was that what? Jealousy, anger, or lust? Which one? What was? Sorry.
Yes.
I hope it was the first one out of those three. But okay.
So you have this idea that the evil eye can actually harm you. Not from the Bible, just something that came out over time, mostly through like Babylonian make-believe and superstition. But in Surah 12, Surah Yusuf, 67, and he said, "Oh, my sons, do not go in by one gate, go in by different gates. I cannot help you in any way against Allah. Indeed, the decision rests with Allah alone. In him do I put my trust, and in him do all the trusting put their trust." Wonderful Arabic. But you have this idea of not going through multiple gates.
Yeah.
That's not from the Bible.
So a non-biblical story, but is something that's found in Genesis Rabbah, is a later rabbinic expansion or commentary, or however you want to, they came up with this additional narrative to explain things. In the 400s, is found in the Quran. That's interesting.
Yeah. And, if that was a one-off, that'd be like, oh, well, you can maybe explain that away. What if I tell you that happens over 1,000 times in the Quran?
Oh, man. It sounds like we have a Talmudic dilemma on our hands.
Yeah, I originally wanted to name it the ear dilemma. But then I didn't know if that was going to do as well as the Talmudic, because people
you made a good choice there.
The Talmud. Yeah.
Well, if I saw the ear dilemma, I'd be like, what? Especially like, if I didn't have a clue about what that was in reference to, and I was just like, this guy's telling me that the Quran has an ear problem. I'd be like, what?
No. I was so tempted to that. That was my original title. Then I decided to go with the Talmudic dilemma as a joke. And I even put like a trademark in my first video I made on it. And then that just kind of stuck. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I've actually named it this forever. So, yeah, you can call this the Midrash dilemma, the ear dilemma. There's so many, because it's not just the Talmud he's pulling from. But the Talmud is one of the primary sources. Bereshit Rabbah is also one of the primary sources. It's almost equally used as the Talmud. So if you only want to read one source to see all of the parallels between Islam and um, Rabbinic Judaism, you just read this source. Don't read the Talmud. Read this one first, and you will get everything. You will see so much. The first chapter and the 8th chapter are used extensively with many different views of Islam. So you don't even have to make it like 10 chapters in to get like, wow, this is the most Islamic Jewish book I've ever read. Then you realize, oh no, the Quran is actually just a Jewish Islamic book. So Islam is a Jewish cult. But it actually gets a little bit deeper whenever you look at the tafsir. So the tafsir actually quote even more closely to the Midrash and the Talmud all the time. So I have Ibn Kathir, Tabari, and Jalalain. Ibn Kathir is pulling from Tabari. But this is from the same passage. Allah says to Yaqub, Jacob, peace be upon him, ordered his children when he sent Benjamin with them to Egypt to enter from different gates rather than all of them entering from one gate. Ibn Abbas, Muhammad bin Qayyab, Mujahid, Adahak, Qatara, Asudi, and several others said that he feared the evil eye for them. Wait, the evil eye is not a biblical concept. That's a rabbinic concept. Why is Ibn Abbas, and Mujahid and Qatada, like big named guys, saying that it's because he feared the evil eye for them that he sent them through different gates? Again, that's not in the Quran, it's not in the Bible, but is in Bereshit Rabbah. So they're adding these details to the Quran. Wait, went forward too much. We're adding these details from the Quran into the tafsir, pulling it from the Jews. And then they answer, because they were handsome and looked beautiful and graceful, he feared that the people might direct the evil eye at them, because the evil eye truly harms by Allah's decree and brings down the mighty warrior rider from source.
So that's
Jews,
interesting, because it's not only the same name, the evil eye, but also the same, or at least a very similar understanding of what the evil eye is. So again, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So if you do a keyword search for evil eye in the tafsir and a keyword search for evil eye in the Talmud and Bereshit Rabbah, the way they talk about it, identical. It can lead to spiritual ruin, like Job. It can lead to physical illness, like leprosy, and it can lead to death. So, checking out the booty can kill people, according to Jews and Muslims. And then we have in Tabari, this mentioned that he said this to them because they were handsome and well-built men, and he feared the evil eye upon them, that if they entered as a group through one gate, being the sons of one man. So they would be super jealous of Jacob, that all of his sons are awesome and hot. And he feared that the sons themselves would get like lusted after by both the men and the women. So Jalalain, and he said, oh, my sons, do not enter Egypt by one gate, but enter by separate gates, lest the evil eyes smite you. So it's literally the smiting. Yeah, I cannot protect you by this that I have said against God. Min Allah. Allahi min is extra anything by which. I don't think I actually need to read the rest of it. I probably cut this off. Anyway, so we have 3 different interpreters for this passage, all adding the detail of the evil eye. And I didn't look through all of the tafsir, but this is a very common thing where if like Tabari mentions it, which he mentions a lot. He just straight up quotes the Talmud. He mentions a lot of the Jewish sources. So therefore, Ibn Kathir and Jalalain, like these later guys, are also just quoting Tabari, but Qurtubi does as well. Qurtubi adds rabbinic commentary. Like Qurtubi is known for like super psychoanalyzing the Arabic text. Like he says, he does like massive paragraphs about the meaning of a single word. Yet Qurtubi as well also uses the Jewish and Christian sources to understand the Quran, mostly from Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Qayyab al-Abar, and Abdullah ibn Salam. So like it's the same dudes all over the place that are giving this rabbinic knowledge to the people. But Ibn Abbas is one of the primary people who is giving Jewish knowledge. And this is a companion of Muhammad who's deeply important for the formation of the Quran. So it's like you have primary sources in Islam using the Jewish understanding to explain their Jewish book. And it gets way more uh, interesting whenever we go deeper into his story. This is one of my favorite examples. So whenever we're trying to deduce influence versus coincidence, you have to have a series of events that are basically in the same order with the same details, and not just similar details, but like details that are unnaturally weird or specific. Like if I said I saw a pink elephant with horns out all of his sides riding a school bus in the air with flames shooting out the back as they kicked on the Nas, and then someone gave the exact same description of an event, that would seem like either we saw the same event or we were influenced. If they come hundreds of years apart, you would assume that it's influence, because obviously they can't observe the same event if it is that far apart.
Or he has a time
So,
machine. But yeah.
or if you have a time machine, yeah. So the Talmud here is 100 to 300 years before Muhammad. The Bereshit Rabbah is about 200 years before Muhammad. And we're looking at all of these things that have very similar details showing up in the Quran and showing up in the tafsir to explain the Quran, to add the context and backstory to it. This is one of my favorite examples. So Rabbi Yohanan said, this is Sota 36b, paragraphs 11 through 14. And these paragraphs, by the way, for those who don't know, these are man-made. These are not actually part of the original source. If you say, you know, paragraph 11 to a Jew who doesn't use Safar, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. So typically people just say Sota 36b, and it's just a page of text that you have to read all of it to understand what they're talking about. So Safara, the main website for rabbinic manuscripts and writing, they added basically like verse numbers, but they're like paragraph numbers, which is very helpful for quoting. But whenever you look through other Jewish sources, you're not going to see these paragraph numbers.
Right.
So just a little heads up for people when they go and study this themselves, especially if you're going through like the Jewish encyclopedics. They have a lot of it. The Jewish encyclopedia has chronologed a lot of the Islamic influence from rabbinicism. So Wiki Islam also has a lot of it. I have more than both of them combined because I've just no life to this for a year, but they have a lot of it already. So if you want to like dig into this, go to Wiki Islam, Jewish or rabbinic influences on the Quran. You can do the same thing with the Jewish encyclopedia. Look up a name, then at the bottom of every section they have, this is what it is in Islam, because it's so common. Islam gets its own section in every entry of the Jewish encyclopedia. So this is Sota 36b. And Rabbi Yohanan says, this teaches that both Joseph and Potiphar's wife stayed in the house as they intended to perform a matter of sin. So they wanted to do this together. This is specifically Whoopi, you know, doing the hanky spanky. One says he entered the house in order to fulfill his sexual needs with her. That day was their festival day, and they went, the Egyptian festival day, and they all went out of their houses to idol worship. So all the Egyptians are going out into the yard to go and do idol worship, and then, you know, do whatever they do with each other, which I have a video on that. If you've not seen my golden calf video, I have a video on the festival of drunkenness and where the golden calf comes from and who the god of the golden calf is. It's a pretty good video. Check it out. It's quite a crazy story. I had to censor a good bit of the original stuff. Anyway, and she told them that she was sick and could not go. So she said to herself, I have no day in which Joseph will attend to me like this day. The verse states, and she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. At that moment, his father's image came and appeared to him in the window. So he intended to do this sin, and he wanted to fulfill his needs with her. She caught him, and he was gonna do it, but then Jacob's image, who's still alive, mind you, but Jacob's image appears in the window, specifically in the window. And the image said to him, Joseph, the names of your brothers are destined to be written on the stones of the ephod, and you are to be included among them. Do you desire that your name to be erased from among them, to be called an associate of a promiscuous woman? Mind you, none of this is actually happening. The ephod isn't even discussed or thought of yet, or I guess not thought of. God already thought about it, but Moses hasn't revealed it. Like, this is basically extreme levels of prophecy from Joseph to convince him not to, you know, get crazy down bad with this woman. Immediately, and his bow abode. So he listened to his dad, and then immediately his bow abode firm. This is a euphemism, which means, Rabbi Yana says, in the name of Rabbi Meir, this means that his bow, i.e., his rod, returned to its strength. He got hard. As he overcame his desires, the verse about Joseph continues, and the arms of his hands were made supple, meaning that he dug his hands into the ground and fluid was emitted between his fingernails.
Okay, this is taking a weird turn, but sure.
This is the Jewish sources. They're all pretty weird. So his dad, he wants to do it with her. His dad appears in the window to keep him from doing it, and then he digs his hands into the ground and emits fluid from between his fingernails. And this is the valid reaction, just the ghost. Now, what is the over-under on the Islamic sources copying all of those details? You know, you wouldn't expect any of those details to really be in it because, you know, he is a pious man. He shouldn't be desiring sin. This is kind of crazy that his dad, who's still alive, appears in the window as a ghost. And then also that he digs his fingers into the grounds and does this. Those are very specific, weird oddities in the Jewish sources, in the Talmud. Well, we get that in the Islamic sources. So in Surah 12, 23, verses 24, and she in whose hand he was asked him to do an evil act. She bolted the doors and said, come. He said, I seek refuge in Allah. Indeed, he is my Lord who has treated me honorably. Indeed, wrongdoers never prosper. She indeed desired him, and he would have desired her. So it admits that he wanted to do it too, if it had not been that he saw the argument of his Lord. This word for argument in the Arabic is the ayats, the miracle, or the
sign.
The sign from God. But the translation here is argument. This is from the Pickthall. Actually, it's from Robert Spencer's The Critical Qur'an, but he's an updated Pickthall. But the sign, the miracle of his Lord, it was this way so that we might ward off evil from him and lewdness. Indeed, he was one of our chosen slaves. So he would have desired her. She asked him to do it. And then he saw an argument from God, a sign from God, in order to ward off the evil from him, which was specifically lewdness. So this mirrors the general layout of this setup in the Talmud. It does not mirror the Bible. The Bible, we have no indication that he actually wants to do it with her. Then in Ibn Kathir and Jalalain, they actually add these fun little details. As for the evidence that Yusuf saw at that moment, there are conflicting opinions to what it was. Ibn Jarir at-Tabari, so this is from al-Tabari, said the correct opinion is that we should say that he saw an ayah from among Allah's ayat that repelled the thought that crossed his mind. This evidence might have been in the image of Jacob, or the image of an angel, or a divine statement that forbade him from doing that evil sin. So these are the three opinions given in al-Tabari, but the first opinion he gives is specifically the image of his dad. Yeah. Okay. So then in Jalalain, Ibn Abbas said Jacob was made to appear before him. So now Ibn Abbas is one of the ones who's giving the image of Jacob explanation. Jacob was made to appear before him, and he struck his breast, whereupon his desire withdrew from his body through his fingernails.
That's a weird way of linking those two things together. Okay.
So is Jalalain paraphrasing the Talmud? Like, what, 800 years later?
Yeah, seems so.
Why? Why would Jalalain at this point, like, you know, the Jews already dhimmis at this point, like, why would Jalalain, I think in the 1400s, why would he quote the Talmud to explain the Quran? Well, it's because Tabari did. And Ibn Abbas. According to their isnads, their guys, Ibn Abbas is the one who said this thing that is exactly from the Talmud. So why is Ibn Abbas quoting the Talmud or paraphrasing the Talmud about this section of the Quran for the argument from his Lord, for the sign from his Lord? This is the sign.
Just to tie this all back, this means that the Quran is influenced by non-prophetic writings. In other words, this isn't Allah giving revelation at a different point in time that the Quran is just quoting from, because ultimately that would all go back to Allah, so that would be fine, right? From their way of looking at the Quran. But it goes back to men who were not prophets. Yep. They were not messengers. Yep. They were just religious scholars in the rabbinic tradition, and they came up with these man-made explanations of things that are not found in the prior scriptures that Allah sent, Islamic dilemma. But this is the whole Talmudic problem. This is the big issue. And I don't think there's an answer to this. I really don't. But yeah, carry on, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think there is either. I do want to correct one thing in the chat. They have Talmudic manuscripts dated long before Muhammad. No, they do not. They have fragments from the Ginza collection that date back to the 600s or 700s. So we know it goes back to roughly right after the time of Muhammad. We have manuscript copies. Now we have a bunch of witness statements, including the Talmud itself, that says it was dated to right around the early 500s. And then there's a couple scholars that are dating it later and later because it seems to be competing with the the Jerusalem Talmud. In the Jerusalem Talmud, we have a firmer date of, I think it was like 350 to 400. So it appears like the Babylonian Talmud was trying to be completed around the same time. And there is a research paper that came out in 2023 on that topic of the Babylonian Talmud is likely much closer in date to the Jerusalem Talmud than it is to the Quran. So we have a bunch of witness statements. Excuse me. We have a bunch of witness statements saying that it was made in the 500s, and traditional later historians and scholars from like the 600s, 700s, 800s that are all saying the Talmud was written in the 500s. So it's like a relatively recent scholarship and historians that are saying, yeah, that's when the book was made. So we do have and then obviously it doesn't have any Arabic in it, so it's not after Muhammad. It wasn't influenced by Muhammad and Islam. But again, he's copying the oral tradition. Now, the tafsir is for sure quoting at times from the Talmud, or at least paraphrasing it. Like, I don't know if I would say that Ibn Abbas here is paraphrasing oral tradition or paraphrasing literally just sota, because this is very specific. Now, granted, this could be from the oral tradition that they're copying from, but we have no way to know whether it was oral or from the written sources. The written sources would not be uber available at the time, so unless Jalalain and later tafsir authors are just making it up that Ibn Abbas didn't actually say this, then maybe Ibn Abbas actually did gain a Talmud in his life because they conquered Yathrib, which may have had one, and they eventually went up and conquered other yeshivas, other cities with yeshivas in it, including Surah eventually became an Islamic. So like Surah is where the Talmud was originally written. So they eventually conquered the city that wrote the Talmud to begin with, and likely would have had original copies. So they did eventually gain manuscript evidence and access to it in like the late 600s, early 700s, before all the tafsirs being written. But as far as Muhammad himself, I think it's mostly oral, because again, he's paraphrasing it. So
yeah,
this is like he saw an argument from his Lord.
Just to add as well, even if you do gain access to a copy of it, obviously you need translators, right? So you need to still trust people, and that's interestingly one of the big problems that Hadith and the Quran itself have with Jews and Christians is that they speak languages that the Arabs at the time didn't, and they had to rely on them for figuring out what's in the scriptures. So I guess the same thing would apply to the Talmud as well.
Yeah, but I mean, again, they're all Semitic languages. They're close enough that you could like have a rough conversation with the person, like someone speaking Italian and Portuguese or Spanish. Like, they're close enough that you get the gist of what they're saying. You might not know specific nouns, might not know specific phrases, but you're going to get the majority of it. And all of the stuff in the Quran is just like most of the theological language is also just straight up copied from them as well. So that it's incorporating all the Jewish stuff. There's a very early polemic in the 600s and 700s that Muhammad was being taught by a person, specifically a Christian Nestorian monk, which might be where the story of Raqqa comes from. But the Jews and Christians say that it was a Nestorian monk that wasn't related to him, so they don't actually say it was Raqqa. They say it was it's either Serge. They have a couple different names for the figure. I think it's Sergius, or Sergius is the general from um Jacobi. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. But they have two different names for this Christian monk. And then you have Raqqa. So you have like three different names of a Christian monk who taught Muhammad. And then eventually Qaib al-Ahbar and Abdullah ibn Salam, according to early polemicists, say that they took the Christian message that Muhammad originally had and then twisted it to be Jewish. And then the Quran was written by these rabbis for Muhammad on behalf of him. So that's a very early polemic. And then you have a semblance of it found in Ibn Ashaq, because it talks about the 10 wise Jews that converted to Islam hypocritically. 8 of them left Islam. Theophanes later says that they left Islam because they saw Muhammad eating camel meat, which is pretty funny. So they realized he wasn't actually the Messiah. And then 2 of the rabbis stayed with Islam. And according to that, it was like around or during the lifetime of Muhammad. So you do have later Islamic sources that identify Qaib and Abdullah as after the time of Muhammad with the Sahaba after Muhammad dies, but during the conquest. They're helping teach them rabbinic and Christian stuff. But you do have early sources and polemicists who are saying that Qaib actually taught Muhammad himself. He was the one in which the Quran says that a man teaches him. So those were 2 rabbis that were involved with the early generation of Islam, possibly with Muhammad himself. And there's also stories of a Christian monk who taught him as well. So you have this argument that I'm giving basically is a like 1st century Islam argument against Islam. So this isn't a new thing. And then obviously scholars have written on this every 100 to 200 years since Islam began. People have mentioned this. And then the most recent big named one is Abraham Geiger. And then obviously you have some of the modern scholars like Joseph Witzman and Gabriel St. Reynolds. Like they're going through this material as well, and a few others like Sinai. I'm basically trying to add all of the sources together and then try to make a coherent timeline of how, when, where, why for the copying, so that I'm making an inference the best explanation of the human traditions within the Quran. And my conclusion is that the Quran is man-made and therefore Islam is false. So I'm going to be way more polemical than the scholars typically are, but I'm going to have all of the scholarship that's been done over the last, 1,300 years in the book available to everyone, plus all the sources that scholarship typically don't add, and then things that are weaker. So we're going to have a very comprehensive version of this argument for the human copying available at least next year, as long as I don't, die in the meantime. Even then, I have like 6 other people who have access to documents. So even if I die, even if I've already get taken out for whatever reason, the book
he's
will still
even
come
got
out.
he's even got his own death plan in case he dies. Look at that for planning. He's got it going. So that's awesome, man. I can't wait for it to come out. That's gonna be great. Great resource for everyone.
I'm very excited. So here's another parallel between the Jewish sources and the Quran for Joseph's story. Again, we still are just in Joseph. And this is Surah 12, ayah 30 and 32. So we've only gone through 23 through 32 this whole time, I believe. We went through as well. Like this little section, only a couple verses of the Quran, you have so many parallels between all of these previous sources in the book. So we have in Surah 12, ayah 30, and women in the city said, the ruler's wife is asking an evil deed of her slave boy. So this is after he like leaves and flees, and then all the people hear about it and like, oh, she's asking him for like a booty call. And then they're mocking her, they're making fun of her. Indeed, he has smitten her to the heart with love. We see that she is clearly mistaken. Also, the word indeed is now my least favorite word reading the Quran.
Why? What's wrong with indeed?
It's in 2/3 of every ayah of the Quran.
Really?
It's one of the most common words of the book.
Huh. Interesting.
It is like here's another indeed down here. I'm sure there's other indeeds here, but
indeed,
indeed,
and there's another one, and there's there's 3 in that
in 2 verses. Yeah. So a full 2/3 of the Quran. Like there's
indeed.
There's 4,000 or 5,000 indeeds in the Quran. So inna is the Arabic word. And inna is a a grammatical structure, but it can be translated as indeed. So he's using a grammatical structure to in like have the next sentence start, but instead of just starting the next sentence like a normal person, he adds this possible grammatical structure to make it into like an affirmation constantly. Because the other one is inol, or oh, what is it? It's whenever you end in at the end of a sentence, instead of starting with ina, you basically end with ina. Whenever you do that, you are indicating that the sentence is continuing in the grammar of the Arabic. And he uses that as well, which like, for example, the Surah of Al-Jinn, where the jinn are giving this long monologue, every sentence the jinn are speaking, it ends in the same word to indicate that it's a continuing thought by the jinn. Well, Muhammad uses this grammatical structure all the time to start sentences. There's even some sentences of the Quran which is indeed, indeed, Allah has done this indeed. It's like, what are you doing?
You know, I can make that one better. If you just say indeed, indeed, Allah has done this indeed, indeed, then it's symmetry, right? So that's a slight improvement.
The circular nature. That's the proof. Yeah, I hate this word now, though. It's one of my favorite words before I read the Quran. I just hated it, reading it so much. Indeed, he has smitten her to the heart with love. We see that she's clearly mistaken. And when she heard about their sly talk, she sent them and prepared a cushion couch for them and gave every one of them a knife and said, come out to them. And when they saw him, they praised him and, exclaiming, Allah is blameless. So whenever you read this with no context.
Is that your attempt at avoiding the algorithm thing?
Yes,
you can't say it because all right,
indeed.
You gotta say, what about people who aren't looking? They're just listening.
They injured their fingies.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah,
injured their fingies with the knife, exclaiming, Allah is blameless. This is not a human being. This is nothing other than some gracious angel. And she said, this is he because of whom you blamed me. I asked an evil act of him, but he abstained. But if he does not do my bidding, he indeed will be imprisoned and indeed will be among those who are brought low. Also, now that I've pointed out the indeed, you guys will see it every single time you read the Quran.
Really, now I'm going to see it everywhere.
Really yeah. Also, this verse has indeed. This verse has two indeeds. This one doesn't have any. So
I'm never going to see it the same.
So annoying. So we have this detail of them like hurting their fingies. And like, well, this is kind of strange. Why in the world are they hurting their fingies? Like, oh, they're like in so much angst about looking at him that they like, but no, that's not what's actually happening. If we read the Jewish sources, we can actually understand what's happening in the Quran. So in Tachuma Vayeshev 5:2, our sages inform us that on one occasion, Potiphar's wife assembled a number of Egyptian women so they might see how very handsome Joseph was. And the reason why she did this is because they were making fun of her in the original source. So they're making fun of her, which is parallel. Then she comes and like, hey, see how hot this dude is, then you'll stop making fun of me. But she summoned Joseph. She gave each of them an ethrong, a citrus fruit, and a knife. And when they saw Joseph's handsome countenance, they hurt their fingies. She said to them, if this can happen to you who only see him once, how much more so does it happen to me who must look at him constantly? Each day she strove to entice him with words, but he suppressed his evil inclination, which is rabbinic talk for temptation / sin / the angel of death / Satan. All of those things are the same thing.
The idea here then is that actually they weren't just intentionally cutting their hands. They were just meant to eat some fruit, cut some fruit, but they were so distracted that they ended up cutting their hands. Oh, wait, I got to use the slang.
Yeah. They hurt their fingies by cutting through.
They hurt their fingies. That's it, yeah.
Yeah. So they were peeling ethrongs and cutting it up to eat it. And they stopped paying attention. They're like, oh, and then go, so just straight through into their little fingies.
Right.
This makes sense. This is a source that actually, like, yeah, I can see how that would happen. The Quran's version makes no sense whatsoever. It just adds this detail that is just like, just out there. Like, okay, that's not from the Bible. What in the world is happening? If you've never read the Tafsir, which uses the Jewish sources, you've never read the Jewish sources, you've only read the Quran, you're a Quran only Muslim. What does this mean?
So
yet,
just to add to this, because you're kind of touching on something I've thought about as well, which is there are situations where the Quran is paraphrasing or being influenced by a extra Quranic source, right? Like the Talmud or the Bible or whatever
Yeah.
it might be, but it gives the worse account. So it gives the less detailed account. It like misses
Yeah.
things, so it doesn't quite make sense. So like
Paraphrases.
you have Surah Al-Miriam, Surah 19, Ayah 7. And this is the whole Zachariah having John the Baptist with his wife, even though they were old, they thought
Pronunciation.
to conceive.
Yeah.
So and it says this is when he announces the name, he'll be called John, and the crowd replies, well, hang on a second, no one in your family has had the name John before. But the Quran takes this whole story, and when it gets to verse 7 of chapter 19, it says, and no one has ever had the name Yahya, which is their version of John, before. Not no one in the family has had the name, but no one has ever had the name.
No one. Yeah.
Which you got to, first of all, that's factually wrong if you take it literally, because there are people with the name Yahya who predate Muhammad, sorry, not Muhammad, who
John.
predate John and have had
John
this
the
before.
Baptist. Yeah.
But not only that, but if you look at how the scholars deal with this, do you know what they do? They just go
No, I've never heard
to
that.
they just go to the Gospels, and they go, oh, well, actually, we read the Gospel of Luke, the first chapter. Turns out it actually says in the family, so we're just gonna like go with that interpretation. So basically, the biblical account is better than the Quranic account, and that's acknowledged by their own scholars who have to use it, because otherwise they have either a nonsensical text or they have a text that is factually wrong. So they have to pick, and it's like, oh, it's so good, it's so good. It's humorous.
Yep. Yeah. I don't think I actually have the eye candy man candy in here. Yeah, I removed it. So the
Wait,
reason
what?
like
you can't say things like
they
that and not explain what you mean.
they
The man
mythicized
candy.
how hot Joseph was in the Jewish sources. Like in the Bible, he's just called like Moed Ifa or like a Moed Roa. Like he's very beautiful. He's a lot to take in. He's a lot to look at. So it's translated as well built and handsome, but he's actually just described as extremely beautiful of appearance or like stunningly beautiful. This is actually the same word used of his grandma, Rebecca. Rebecca is called this whenever she was apparently 3 years old and watered 10 camels. But she is called that. There's only like 4 people in the whole Bible that's called that phrase. So they're like, oh, well, this is a unique thing about Joseph. He was just so hot. And they came up like that's the premise. And they came up with all of this nonsense to stack onto it to describe how hot he was. And they had like women up on the walls of the cities, like trying to peek in through like the bars of the windows to like get a glimpse at him as he's walking by. He would comb his hair, curl his eyelashes, and walk on his tippy toes to like lift up his butt to make his butt firmer.
Okay.
And there's so many of them. Like women would like faint and swoon whenever they saw him. Like he is described as an angelic presence, like a man beyond men. Which is why this story of the hurting of the fingies actually exists. In the rabbinic sources, Joseph is so handsome. He's like not even like he's barely human. He's just like this perfection of masculinity, so much so that both the women and the men want him. So Potiphar was apparently how can I phrase this with the way YouTube will like it? He was emasculated by God. So God cut off everything in order to keep him from raping Joseph, because apparently Potiphar bought Joseph for the purpose of having intercourse with him. So then God emasculated him violently. So, and then Potiphar's wife decided to get in on the action.
Oh.
So he was so hot.
Okay.
He's so hot that both males and females.
I was going to say, not only Potiphar's wife, but also Potiphar himself.
Potiphar himself, which is also how they get to the name Potipharah. So the female name of Potiphar in the Bible that comes up, like, oh, that's Potiphar after he's been emasculated. Now he's a woman.
That's really weird. Okay, interesting.
So again, it's all of this background to explain this one detail of like why this happened, and none of the background is in the Quran. He just has this rabbinic detail, doesn't fully explain it. It's like a paraphrase of it, and doesn't explain why he's so hot or why the women are treating him this way. It just happens. He's just taking it for granted that his audience would know about the Jewish background in the Midrash and in the Talmud. So you have that then Ibn Kathir and Al-Tabari, again, quote Ibn Abbas and Mujahid. So you'll see a pattern. Ibn Abbas is in most of these. Ibn Kathir, they heard of Yusuf's beauty and wanted to see him, so they said these words in order to get a look at him. This is when she sent for them. They invited them to her house. Ibn Abbas said, Sayyid bin Jubar, Mujahid, Al-Hassan, Asadi, and several others commented that she prepared a sitting room which had couches, pillows to recline on, and food that requires knives to cut, such as citron. Well, what is an ethrog? It's a citrus fruit. And specifically, they had the couches to lay on, cushion couches here. I thought they also had that in this source, but maybe not. But you have specifically the knives to cut and the citrus fruit. This is why Allah said, next to she gave each one of them a knife as a part of her plan of revenge for their plot to see Yusuf. Then Al-Tabari has Sulaiman ibn Abd al-Jabbar narrated to me saying, Muhammad ibn al-Salat narrated to us saying, Abu Kandana narrated to us from Hussein, from Mujahid, from Ibn Abbas, and prepared for them a muqtaka, and gave each of them, so this is the couch, and gave each of them a knife, and he said that she gave them citrons, and gave each of them a knife. So Ibn Abbas and Mujahid are narrating this through this chain, that she had a knife and citrus fruit for all of the people for this story. This is Al-Tabari. So the earliest, most authentic, or most authoritative, important tafsir has these details in it the vast majority of the time. Mostly through Ibn Abbas, but also through a variety of others for the different stories. This is one of my favorite ones that Qurtubi actually adds in this narrative. So Qurtubi has in this section is narrated from Ibn Abbas, again, Ibn Abbas. They deemed him great and revered him. It is also said they experienced emission from astonishment.
Sorry?
So
they experienced emission.
The women got so, I'll just keep reading, I'll explain it. Ibn as-Saman said from a group of his companions, they said they emitted out of passion. Wahab ibn Munabba, this is one of the primary rabbinic sources for Islam, said they loved him so much that 10 of them died in that gathering out of astonishment. They were so excited about him that 10 of them died. Wow. Out of astonishment, bewilderment, and passion for Joseph. It is also said it means that they menstruated out of astonishment.
Hang on a second. Those things are very different. How do you die from astonishment and you menstruate from astonishment? That's very different. Okay. All right then.
Like pressing the ketchup unexpectedly.
Man, these some of the things, man.
The comments are on point today. The Quran feels like a bad movie renewal, like the whole female Ghostbusters versus the OG movies.
Yeah, I can understand that. Man, this is just some of the things.
This is a Jewish belief, by the way.
The emotional excitement might. Sorry, I'm reading ahead. The emotional excitement might have caused her to have a flow of menstrual blood. Okay.
So this is a Jewish belief that women who get too emotionally stimulated or sexually stimulated will actually start bleeding uncontrollably. But you have to ask, why did Rava come up with this? Because this is Anita 66a.
So earlier in this passage, I just thought, like, I'm gonna have to be like, right, let's talk about the Islamic dilemma. Right. So women menstruating. I don't want to do that, Chris.
It's so funny. Well, this passage is also relevant because this is maybe where Mutza comes from.
Oh, okay. Because the
So
Muto has to get in here somewhere. All right.
yeah, NIDA 66A. Earlier on in this section, and I believe it's also in Yevamot 37B. So this is the ones for marriage and betrothal. So these are the tractates on marriage and betrothal. You have Rava giving this explanation, saying, with regard to one who proposes marriage to a woman and she accepted it, the emotional excitement might have caused her to have a flow of menstrual blood, which would render her ritually impure and prohibit her from engaging in intercourse. Why does Rava come up with this? Well, it turns out two of the Babylonian rabbis, whenever they traveled for work or for teaching or whatever else they were doing, they apparently would go to the town square in the evening and yell out, "Who wants to marry me for the night?"
Okay. Right.
They would they would just solicit single women to marry them for the evening. And Rava was like, "Huh, well, we can't have, the sages going out and just doing muta with a bunch of random
This
women everywhere they
reminds me of
go."
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this is also in the middle of a debate on why a man can't have wives in multiple cities. And the reasoning is, if a man goes out and gets married in multiple cities, you might accidentally cause the children of both marriages to marry and cause an abomination in the land through incest. So you don't want your kids to accidentally commit incest because they don't realize that they're related.
Wait.
That's
Wouldn't that only happen if you didn't know your dad had multiple wives who had kids,
yeah,
right? Wait, that implies
that
that
would have,
you did a Muhammad job and you married in secret and you didn't tell anyone.
yes. Yep.
Oh.
They then continue to go and say, "Oh, well, this rule doesn't apply to sages because they're so well known. Everyone will know who their dad is. So then, therefore, they can't accidentally commit incest." So the sages are allowed to do muta because they're popular. So if you get popular enough, you're allowed to do it because there's no risk of incest.
So someone tell Muhammad a job quick. If you get popular enough, Muta is
So
permissible
then,
now.
but then Rava was like, "Well, that still has like the sages who are supposed to be like the most pious people ever. These are the people that are supposed to, because again, as we mentioned yesterday, you have to follow the sunnah of the rabbis. They are so pious, they are so holy that whatever decision and action they do is perfectly holy. You must imitate it." There's even this idea that the Talmud, the students of the rabbis, they follow the rabbis so closely that the dust of the rabbis' footprints land on their students. So they're like carbon copies of each other. They're doing exactly the same thing. So one of the rabbis that went out and was like, "Hey, who wants to marry me for the evening?" His student was the other one who was doing it. So Rava, in order to protect the dignity of these rabbis from going out and doing muta, this is his response. So, oh, well, even if they did do this, because, they have a bunch of people saying that they did, even if they did do this, it doesn't matter because they're not actually having intercourse with these women. They're doing it in order to protect them from being tempted with lust, because it's easier to withstand temptation if you have bread in your basket and if you didn't have bread in your basket. That's literally the phrasing they use. So it's easier to not eat food whenever you have food than it is to not eat food whenever you don't have food, according to them. Which doesn't really make sense, but that was their reasoning. And then he explains after that point, oh, well, the women, because the sages are so popular, they're so, they're the sages. Any woman that would get proposed to by a sage would get so excited about it that she would uncontrollably bleed. And then the rabbi can't have intercourse with her because she's ritually impure. So,
okay,
this is the reason why you can't do it, according to Rava. But this rabbi's opinion ends up in Okotomi.
Al-Qurtubi was a learned man. He knew about all the great commentaries that came before him, clearly, and he only picks the finest ones, like these ones, apparently. But
oh man, it's so funny. Anyway, so this is Judgment Day. It's one of the big ones. Judgment Day and eschatology makes up around 33% of the Quran. The stories of the prophets make up around 25% of the Quran. So this is more, there's more stuff on hellfire, on Jannah, on Judgment Day than there is on the actual stories of the prophets. And if you've read the Quran, you know how much there is about the stories of the prophets. So
Yes.
all of Judgment Day, all of their eschatology is just straight copied from the Jewish sources, a little bit from the Christian sources, but it's mostly from the Jewish sources. So this is one source, one section of one tractate, right? Has all of these parallels. I've actually, like, you see all these dot dot dots. I'm cutting out a lot of text, but this is just or 3 pages, 2A, 2B, and 3A. 3 pages of a single tractate are going to have all these parallels. So let's just read it, then you can think to yourself, oh yeah, that sounds like Islam. So all the mitzvah, all the laws that the Jews perform in this world will come and bear witness for them in the world to come. Well, that sounds like the Quran. Like, you know, all the surahs, if you listen to the surahs, if you practice what they teach, the surahs will intercede for you on Judgment Day, according to Islam. Here we have the laws. If the laws that you're doing, the laws will come to life and bear witness for you. So we have the Quran coming to life and bearing witness. We have the law coming to life and bearing witness. This demonstrates that the objects of idol worship will serve as witnesses against their worshippers. So again, in the Quran, the idols, you know, anything that you make that could form life, so which is why you're not allowed to like draw cartoons of things that are realistic. Whenever they make a cartoon, they can't have eyes and ears and other things. So the objects that you create for worship become witnesses against you on Judgment Day. They come to life and witness against you that you worshipped them. Oh, that sounds like the Quran. Immediately, the nations of the world will gather together and come intermingled with each other, and every nation will enter with their scholars. Well, this actually is the imam, like your leaders, your teachers. That is the word used in the Quran. So you have that you will come together in groups, not intermingled. And this is also in the Quran. You're not allowed to have all the world together. So he separates out all the peoples into separate groups. And then their imams are in front of them. So their teachers, their leaders, they're in front of them for every group. And then the nations will say before God, Master of the universe, did you give us the Torah and did we not accept it? So God is accusing them that they didn't follow the law. And then the Gentiles, the nations will say, did you give us this Torah and we did not accept it? Did we have this law that you're accusing us of? Since we never received the Torah, why are we being judged for not fulfilling its laws? This teaches that the Holy One, blessed be he, so then he goes and says, no, you are responsible for it. So what's cut out. This teaches that the Holy One, blessed be he, took the Torah around to every nation and those who speak every language. So there is a book given to all nations in their language for them to be liable on Judgment Day for their group that they're separated into. And then, Master of the universe, did you overturn the mountain above us like a basin, and we still do not accept the Torah like as you did for the people of the Jewish people? I said that, as you did for the Jewish people. So this also teaches that Mount Sinai was picked up and then held over them and then threatened to drop on the Jews. And that's why they accepted the law. So the Jews were coerced into accepting the law. And then the Gentiles are complaining about it like, hey, didn't you overturn this mountain above the Jews? And that's why they accepted it, but you didn't do that for us. So how are you blaming us? So you have the people of the world complaining to God. And this also happens in the Quran. Like he says, your arguments will not be accepted on Judgment Day. You will have no one to appeal to. You have no one to intercede for you. So we have this idea of interceding and appealing and the witnesses of idols and the witnesses of the law or the book, nations all having the book in their language, prophets sent to all nations. And so this is one section of the Talmud. And you have so much of their eschatology, so much of their Judgment Day, all of their end time stuff, one section of the Talmud. And of course, you get the Mount Sinai hovering above them. This obviously did not happen whenever you look at the geological data. There is no mountain that was picked up in the Middle East. Didn't happen. If it did happen, Allah miraculously restored it to where there's not a single trace of it happening. But then that is just like begging the question. Like, that doesn't really prove anything. Like if you don't have proof of the miracle.
I was thinking about this earlier today, actually. I don't think you can. It introduces big theological problems if you say God gave a sign to what is basically either the whole world or like large portions of people would have seen this. I was thinking about the moon splitting in this context, but
Oh yeah,
if
no,
you
it's
if
crazy.
you if you design the miracle in such a way that you would make sure most people don't witness it, I feel that kind of defeats the point of it being a sign to the world. So you now
Yep.
have this theological problem of, well, God gave a sign to the world and he made it so that most people wouldn't see the sign. And I'm like, well, why did he do that in the first place? Because why not just give a sign to just a small group of people? Like, wouldn't that be like your intent? You sort of see what I mean. Um, this is why I find it very weird when the Quran's like, there was this moon splitting and everyone saw it. It was and all this stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, but you have to introduce. Oh, okay, but he split the moon, but then he put it back together, and he did it in such a way that basically left no evidence of that. And no, the crack in the moon is not evidence of that. NASA says no. But
Yep.
like, and no one saw it because, and also it would have like massive implications, like tidal ramifications to do with the ocean and things. He just overruled that and made sure that didn't happen. You have to introduce so many little things to be like, well, actually, yes, he did do this, but with so many caveats that he basically didn't do it. Or at least, he
Yep.
did it for like 7 people, which it just defeats the point to me.
We're all dead whenever the Quran revealed it. So like, why even mention it?
Mm.
Um, but this is a rabbinic idea. This is coming from the Jews, from two different sections of the Talmud. So you have it here, but you also have it in another section by the same rabbi. So it's Rabbi Adimi Bar Hana. So we like know who did it. We know why he did it because he misunderstood one of the words in Hebrew, and all this theological stuff that comes out of it. It's like you overturned it so that they would accept it. It's the exact same context in the Quran where it's mentioned, I think, 3 times in the Quran. In the context of the Quran, is God is lifting it up over them, and then he threatens them, says, "Accept my law, and it'll be good for you. Don't accept it, and this place will become your burial." Um, and it's like, so he's gonna kill them if they don't accept it. They're coerced into accepting the law, and it's treated more like a punishment. Well, I mean, in the Jewish sources, it's kind of treated more like a punishment. Now, there's a lot of the ones who are praising the law and saying that the Jews are the best because they follow the law and they keep it all, but you still do have like, it sounds a little resentful. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. So on the day we gather them all together, we say to those who associate partners, their partners say, "It was not us you worshipped." So the partners come alive, and then their hands speak out to us, and their feet bear witness again for the partners, the idols. And there's not a nation except that a warner has passed among them. So all the nations of the world got the prophets in their own language in order to be held liable on Judgment Day. And then this is actually not all the stuff on Judgment Day that's the same. There's a lot that is the same. You have all the stuff with I'll have it. No, we'll go back through it. We can go through this after I get through the Syriac stuff, but let's go through Durul Qarnayn. Now Durul Qarnayn is very interesting. This is Surah 18, and Surah 18 itself has 4 different Christian narratives that he is responding to. So he's responding to the sleepers of the cave of Ephesus. He's responding to Al Qaeda, and he's responding to Moses and the fish. And he's responding to the Syriac legend of Alexander for Durul Qarnayn. In the Peshitta, in the Syriac translation of Daniel 8, it actually identifies Alexander, the son of Philip, as the 2-horned one. So, in the Christian source before the Syriac Alexander legend, we have a Syriac source that says that Alexander the Great is one with 2 horns. They count it. He has a big horn and a little horn. The original Daniel 8 doesn't actually have it as Alexander, but because it was written before Alexander, it was prophecy of Alexander. Later Jews and Christians realized, oh no, that actually was Alexander. Therefore, they assigned Alexander in the text, even though it kind of defeats the purpose of the miracle, like the prophecy, like the fulfilled prophecy aspect of it. But they just insert the name Alexander multiple times into the text of Daniel 8 and call him the 2-horned one. And then we also have busts and murals and coins where Alexander the Great has horns on it. I'll eventually make a video on this. David Wood did a presentation at the conference, but I don't think that is online. And
I
that
think,
was a fun presentation. He made.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong about this. From what I understand, the association with Alexander the Great having 2 horns is incredibly well documented. Like, that was a very common way of depicting him.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like it was. I mean, Alexander was like I don't know. I can't think of an equivalent thing. Like uh this is a terrible one, but like the Trump of our time, in the sense of everyone knows. If you say Trump, you know who you're talking about, right? You're not talking about the guy down the road. You're talking about the president
Right,
of America, right? So likewise, to say Alexander
right,
the Great, you know who that is, and this guy was
right.
known for being depicted with two horns. So
Yeah. He was depicted with two things, primarily the Nemean lion's coat, and then also the horns of, I believe, Hermes. Zeus was bonded to Ammon in the Egyptian folklore. So in Alexandria, he was depicted as, and Alexandria is obviously the city that he named after himself after he conquered Egypt. But in Alexandria, there's depiction of him as the two-horned one, having the horns of Ammon, who's a bull deity, and then you have Zeus. So he's the son of Zeus because he's the reincarnation of Hercules or Heracles. And Heracles is the Nemean lion, so that's why he has the Nemean lion. So he has both the Nemean lion because he's the reincarnation of Heracles, and he has the horns because he is the son of Zeus. And Zeus was portrayed in that way in Egypt. So that became a very dominant, quickly, that became the dominant view of Alexander. So all of the legends that come after him usually include him as either a god, in like a la Heracles, or as these two-horned entity who's a bit more human than god. But either way, that is the depiction in history of Alexander the Great.
just to add,
So
I don't know if you're going to say this, but I'm just coming into my head now. Everyone claimed Alexander the Great for themselves. Like everyone took
yeah,
him, and because of what he did, it was so well known. His influence was felt in such vast areas that everyone was like, "Oh, Alexander the Great, yeah, he was a Christian. Oh no, he was Jewish. Oh, he was a pagan. Well,
he's
he was
Muslim.
pagan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah." And that's what the Quran does. The Quran is like, I want in on this. I see what you guys
Yeah.
are doing. I've heard this. I'm gonna say he's a Muslim, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's amazing.
It's really funny. So I mostly am going through the tafsir on this because this is copied from the Israelite presentation I did with David. So the purpose of that was to show the tafsir using the Jewish sources. So it's going to be mostly the tafsir on the section, but the Quran itself reads like a paraphrase of the Syriac Alexander legend. Um, but obviously, Alexander the Great was a pagan. He self-worshipped. He even destroyed Tyre because they weren't allowing him to worship himself in their city, which is a really funny story. It's also a fulfilled prophecy of the Bible. He got so
Interesting.
butthurt at Tyre that he used the giant stones of the ruins of the land city of Tyre that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed. He built a mile long, so like 1.6 kilometers. He built a mile long moat in the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. He grabbed a bunch of stones over the span of a couple of years and built a siege ramp up to an island. So he connected the land to an island using the ruins of the old city of Tyre, which is prophesied in the Bible that their stones would be hurled into the sea. And these are like massive stones. These are stones about the size of my house. So they are massive stones that are being hauled slowly and thrown into the sea. And they actually built out this giant bridge to be able to conquer the city because his navy got like whooped by them a couple times. And he got butthurt. So he got butthurt. They weren't allowing him to come in and worship. Then they got butthurt because his navy lost. So then he spent years building a giant siege ramp to conquer the city, then burned it all to the ground and then destroyed it. So there's
Well,
it's a pretty cool fulfilled prophecy in the Bible.
mm.
Just like the unilateral. This is right before he died, mind you. This is like 28 whenever it happened. So it's just so butthurt. He just decided to conquer one of the most powerful empires in history by building a mile-long bridge from the bottom of the sea up to the surface, one stone at a time. Like crazy dude, absolutely insane. So you can see like why all of these myths are coming out about Alexander. He's a man larger than life. But we have in Tabari, and I think Tabari is the one I'm going through for most of these connections. But Wabit ibn Munabba, so again, one of the rabbinic sources, said that he had knowledge of earlier traditions, that he used to say Dul Qarnayn was a man from Rome, the son of an old woman among them who had no children other than him, and his name was Alexander. So this rabbi is identifying him as Alexander the Great. He was only called Dur Qarnayn because the two sides of his heads were made of copper/bronze. When he reached maturity and was a righteous servant, and it continues on, we'll go through it in a little bit. But in the Syriac Alexander legend, obviously it's Alexander the Great, and he has this is a synopsis, like he travels to the ends of the world, makes a gate of iron, and then makes it so that the Huns cannot come out and plunder the countries. The Huns will become relevant, as we'll see in a little bit. By the time the Quran is written, by the time the Tafsir were written, the Huns were no longer the threat. It was the Turks. But the Huns and the Turks both come out of the Caucasus, and they're horseback archers. So if you see a historian talking about the Huns in the 800s, they'll call them Turks, even though they're totally different groups. So in the Islamic sources, they're called Turks, and the Christian source, they're called Huns, but that's pretty much the same thing. Just to note. Surah 18, as they will ask you about Dur Qarnayn, I say I will recite to you a remembrance of him. So this is a paraphrase of him. Then he cites a paraphrase of the Syriac Alexander legend. Well, it took him 15 days to come up with this. So they asked him about Dur Qarnayn. He took 15 days to respond because he didn't say Wallahi. And then he gives this paraphrase of this Christian source as if it's true. Problem is, this isn't true. So either you say that this is like a satanic verse that's still in the Quran, or you say the Quran has verifiably false information in it, which would obviously make Islam false. So you can actually run this whole argument just from Dur Qarnayn, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But obviously you can add all of these other hundreds and thousands of ayah that are also copied. But Wahb bin Amurba, again, the rabbi, said Dur Qarnayn was a king. It was said about him, then why was he named Dur Qarnayn? He said the people of the book differed concerning him. So the Christians and the Jews differed concerning him, which is true. Some of them said he ruled the Romans and Persia. Others said on his head there was something resembling two horns, which is the Christian side. He was only called Dur Qarnayn because of the two sides of his head were made of copper. This is again his view. Now, obviously, Qarnayn is the dual clause for horns, and that's why he's called this. He's the two-horned one. And then the Alexander legend, we have that you have caused horns to grow on my head so that I may gore the kingdoms of the world. So he's conquering the world. God caused the horns to grow on his head, and he literally had horns made out of iron. This is God speaking to him. I caused horns of iron to grow on your head so that you may gore with them the kingdoms of the world. So this matches the Peshitta, matches the Syriac idea before the Syriac Alexander legend. And then we have sides of his head being made out of metal in Tabari, and we have something like horns on his head in Tabari. Not specifically iron horns, but you have both ideas. Then you have the fetid sea, which is very similar. The fetid sea is basically a sea of like boiling pus that whenever you go to it, even if birds fly over it, everything dies. So they traveled to the end of the world and they found the 11 bright seas and the fetid sea beyond the bright seas and the earth that's at the end. So the earth is flat in a big circle where there's 11 seas that border, then there's a landmass, then there's the fetid sea beyond that. And then the sun sets into the fetid sea and out of the fetid sea on the opposite sides of the planet. So King Alexander was frightened with the Jew because he saw his camp die. He threw a bunch of death row inmates into the waters to see what would happen, and they died. So then he knew that they couldn't cross the ends of the earth. So then the whole camp mounted, and Alexander and his troops sent out between the fetid sea and the shining sea until he reached the place where the sun enters the window of heaven. So in the Hadith, and in the Quran, it talks about how he finds where the sun sets into muddy water. This is the same idea. We have Qayyib al-Abar. So this is one of the rabbis that's accused of writing the Quran for Muhammad. He said, as for the sun, it sets in thick mud. So it was, Ibn Abbas said, and Thayat means mud. Well, Qayyib was asked why he said this, and he said, you are more knowledgeable about the Quran than I, but I find it in the book that it sets in black clay. So according to Kaib al-Ahbar, in the Bible, you find that the sun sets into black clay, black mud. And obviously not in the Bible, but a rabbi is saying that, or it comes from rabbinic tradition that he's pulling from. Because again, as you mentioned, the Jews had their own version of the story. So he says in the book, he finds this narrative of the sun setting into the planet. And that's why the Quran has it, supposedly. But in the Syriac legend, again, you have from the place where it rises, he went about to rise the people who dwell there and flee and hide the sea in order to not be burned by its rays. So the idea is he went to the other side of the planet and he found where the sun is rising up, and where it rises up, the people hide in the clefts of the rocks and in the water, in the ocean, or the sea rather, to not be burned by the sun, because the sun is more intense where it rises than where it sets. And then while David was presenting this, he looked at me because I was already sunburned, and he laughed and said, Chris wouldn't have any place to flee. And I was like, thanks. I appreciate it. He's like, this is your worst nightmare. I was sitting next to me and he giggled at that.
Yeah. So from what I understand, the Syriac Alexander legend is roughly contemporary-ish with the Quran, or at least some people would date it.
No.
Roughly.
Yeah.
No?
So there's debate on the dating. The old dating from the 80s by two different scholars was to 629 AD. And that is obviously at the end of Quran or Islam's lifetime, or not Islam, I wish, but the end of Muhammad's lifetime, where he's no longer writing the Quran.
Oddly specific.
He was asked to, it's specifically during the reign of Justinian. So the Syriac Alexander legend has a prophecy in which the Persians will be defeated and the Huns will be released, and then the Christians, Alexander and his Christian army will fight back against the people of the Huns and destroy them, and God will give them blessings and honor. And then he will give his throne to Jesus, so Jesus can return to then rule on earth. Because again, Alexander is a strict monotheistic Christian in this story. He constantly praises Jesus and says, Jesus, you are everything, I am nothing, I will give you my throne. So it's basically propaganda from the Byzantines. The Byzantine Empire basically wrote this, or Christians within the Byzantine Empire wrote this as a propaganda piece against the Persians and against the Huns. So you look at, there's two different empires, two different emperors who were ruling during major conflicts with the Persians. So you have Justinian, and you also have, I think it's Herodias, the first, but might be
Miraculous.
Miraculous?
No.
Byzantine. I'll just Google it so I don't give people wrong. In 578. Justinian is the early one. I think Heraclius is the one in 630. So Justinian is the early one, and then I'll look up the one for the later one. Heraclius. So Heraclius is from 610 to 640, and then Justinian is from 568 to 578. So Justinian is likely the actual emperor during this time period, for a couple different reasons. There's two different prophecies within the Syriac Alexander legend, and one of them ends right around the time of Justinian, and the other one ends right around the time of Heraclius. So that also gets into like why maybe Muhammad was a doomsdayer, because there's this doomsday prophecy of Gog and Magog being released from the wall and destroying the world at 630 AD. So according to the Syriac Alexander legend, in the 630s, the world will be destroyed by Gog and Magog. And according to the Hadith, Muhammad wakes up from a nightmare and says, oh, those dang pagans, because of their sin, there's been a hole this big formed in the wall that holds back Juj and Majuj. So according to Muhammad, according to the Hadith, and Sahih Bukhari, there was a hole being made in the wall that holds back Juj and Majuj, and that will lead to the end of time. So he was a doomsdayer. There's lots of doomsday prophecies within Islam by Muhammad, all of which didn't come true. because Muhammad's a false prophet. But he appears to like legit be thinking that the world was going to end immediately within the next like 5, 10, 20 years. And this might be one of the influences in why he thought the world was about to end, because there were several Christians like, hey, the world's going to end. So, you have that. But the debate on the dating is which emperor was fighting the Persians for whenever this propaganda was written. Was it written during Heraclius whenever he was fighting them, or was it written during Justinian whenever he was fighting them? And the dating for the prophecy helps eliminate it. So Dr. Tessie in 2023 wrote a book on the Syriac-Alexander legend. He goes through the debate and he gives a new case on why he thinks it should be dated to 570. And then Cindy Griffith also has done this, and she says even if it has the 629 date for the written account, the oral tradition goes back before Muhammad. So even if you're like, oh well, it's written in the late 620s, therefore Muhammad couldn't have copied it. Well, the oral tradition was already circulating, but we do have good evidence to suggest that it was actually written in the 570s, and therefore it would be around for 60, 70, 80 years before Muhammad,
so
wrote
I mean,
in the Quran.
One thing I heard from Gabriel Reynolds actually that Sidney Griffith he actually passed away recently, which is really, really sad, because I actually quote his work, the Bible in Arabic, which is a totally awesome book. You guys should totally get. But yeah, also my thinking was that, well, this, from what I understand, this is just the Syriac translation of it. I could be wrong about this, but which of course, if it is,
Tessie says that the Syriac-Alexander legend might be the first of the romances, and the success of the Alexander legend actually rose to the writing of the different languages for the Alexander romances. So the Alexander romances, according to him, might be a byproduct of the legend, not the other way around.
Right, which would mean the legend predates the actual text. Right.
Which were written in the late 500s. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think that is pretty reasonable. But even if you do take the later date, obviously everything that's written down was at once oral in this culture, these time periods. It's not like you don't have like Stephen King's just like making up everything wholesale. Usually you have people talking about something or coming up with something for a decade or so before someone gives a famous homily that's written down, or it comes up in a midrash or any of that. Like the stuff in the Talmud, the stuff in the midrash had been circulating for hundreds of years before it was even written down. So you have obviously hundreds of years of it in human knowledge and tradition and reason before it ends up in the Quran. So even if the Talmud postdates Islam in being written, which I seriously doubt, but even if it did, you still have those oral traditions going back to the 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s, to where Muhammad would still not be the first one writing it, not the first one thinking about that, the first one speaking it, which is, again, as we went over yesterday, the primary accusation against his people, well, against him from his people, is not that he's not performing miracles, which comes up a lot. It's not that he's just, blatantly making stuff up. It's that he's hearing this from people before him. These are just tales of people of old. You're just a poet repeating these stories. And then he's the ear. So they're saying, hey, these are things we've heard all of our lives. You're just repeating it. And then claiming that it's a prophet, or that you're claiming that it's a miracle. You're claiming that this is proof of your prophethood. And then his proof text in Surah 29 is that, hey, yeah, because I've never read these things, yet I can successfully reproduce them. Obviously, I'm a prophet, which is a really stupid criteria. But that's what he went with.
It's not a good argument. Yeah.
Not a good argument, yeah. But you have the sun rising upon a people who can't be covered in it, and then they would submerge in waters and go into tunnels. And you also get this in the Alexander legend, where they're hiding in caves and they're hiding in the water as well. They hide in the sea to not be burned. And then you have the Gog and Magog, which are called Huns here. And then they're called the land of the Turks in Tabari. So Tabari has Turks, Alexander has Huns. Those are the same people. They're just talked about differently within the different time periods. But we have Gog and Magog in both of these sources. That's not supposed to be God. I don't know why it's Gog. Anyway, so in the Syro-Alexander legend, we have that Alexander passed by all the lands, and this is after he went to the place where the sun sets and the place where the sun rises. And it also talks about how the sun goes down and prostrates before God every night, which happens in the Hadith. So the Hadith also take from the Syro-Alexander legend. But you have that he goes to the great mountain range, and there is that place away by which the merchants access their inner regions. The people of that land told him, "It is the Huns," Alexander told them, "and who are their kings?" The old men replied, "Gog and Magog." So the kings of the Huns are Gog and Magog. So they are identified because, in the Bible, it's a little bit obscure who it is. It might be China, it might be Russia, it might be some Islamic caliphate. Like, we don't know who Gog and Magog is, just some armies of the East. But here they're identified as the kings of the Huns explicitly by the Christians. And then we have in Al-Tabari that there are two mountains, which there's an opening, so there's a way. And then Dul Qarnayn constructed a barrier between Gog and Magog and those beyond them. Ibn Abbas and Qatada both gave these accounts. So again, you have Ibn Abbas giving this narrative of this Christian legend. And then you have the wall itself. The Huns are terrifying. They would kill babies and boil them, then drink them whole. And they would rip babies out of the wombs of mothers who were pregnant to eat them. So they were bestial. They can't even speak language because they're barely human. So they're savage animals in human form doing a bunch of messed up stuff. And then that's how the Huns are described in the Syro-Alexander legend. And then you have in Al-Tabari that the people, they eat grass, they prey upon beasts and wild animals, just as predatory animals prey upon them. So they're bestial. They can't speak language, they can't be reasoned with. Then he builds up a gate of bronze and blocks it up. He builds it up with iron and then blocks it with bronze. So bronze is mostly copper. And then you have in the Islamic sources that it's iron and copper. So you have, and then obviously this mountain that's, it's a wall as high as the tallest mountains on the planet. So imagine an iron wall the size of Mount Everest. That's what we're talking about in both sources. And on the other side of it are billions of people who may or may not be zombies, waiting to be released.
I love the Yasakadi interpretation. It's the best ever.
Yeah, it's so good.
Have you guys not considered it might just be the zombie apocalypse? Just a suggestion. I love it.
Don't say zombies. That's so embarrassing. He's like, well, I gotta call them something. They come out of the ground in the Quran. What kind of people come out of the ground like plants?
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, you know what? If you want to watch something that's just really bizarre, is watch someone try and defend that this thing exists today. It's so. People are like, okay, but we have Google Earth, right? We can literally zoom in with satellites, and it would be like, well, and then they'll try. First of all, they say, well, maybe it's actually some already existing wall, and it's just exaggeration. So they'll be like, look at the Great Wall of China or something. That's a wall. Maybe it's talking about that. And then it's like, yeah, but where's the Gog and Magog? What is it? The Chinese then? What are you? It goes into really weird places, and it's fun watching people try and defend it.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And we actually know historically what wall it is because there was a wall in a mountain range that Alexander made to hold back the Huns. Not the Huns, because he didn't fight Huns at the time. It was the Barbarous people. It was whenever he was conquering southern Russia, but he built out this wall in the Caucasus to hold back a people, and it was a wooden wall. It was not made of iron, but he reinforced it with iron, and it was a big wall. It was not the size of a mountain. It was not made out of iron. It was not covered in bronze, but it was a big wooden wall that was reinforced with iron. Because iron is a metal for warfare, you would use it for swords, shields, armor. You would not use it to build a wall that people could dig under or just go around. So using that much iron for a wall is stupid. It's incredibly stupid. So it never would have been done.
Yeah, it never would have been done. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have some Muslim coping. As I mentioned earlier, there's hadith that say that there's a hole formed in the wall. So Is Sahih Bukhari not real? Is it not accurate that has Muhammad waking up from a dream and then worrying about the hole that was made in the wall holding back Jews and Majus? Like, they're treated as if it's literal. The tafsir treats it as if it's literal. You are you're doing bid'ah,
So
sir.
yeah,
You're no longer a Muslim.
I don't even think it. The problem doesn't go away if it's symbolic. That's the issue. The problem still
Yeah.
remains that the Quran is quoting from sources that it thinks are revelation, but they're not revelation. They're human sources. So
Yep.
it doesn't matter if the text is meant to be literal, figurative, prophetic, poetry. It doesn't matter the genre. What matters is that the Quran seems to think it's actually from God. The Syriac Alexander legend is not from God. So there you go. That's the whole problem. And yet we don't see any
The
answers to that.
Talmudic dilemma.
The Talmudic
Yeah,
dilemma.
why is your God copying humans for his information?
Yeah, I mean,
Why
again,
is your God copying why is God copying false things made by humans for his information?
And this is a specifically Islamic problem because of the view you guys have of the Quran. You think that Allah dictated it word for word to Jibril, then from Jibril to Muhammad, then from Muhammad to his companions. And you think at no point does man ever have any kind of relationship with that revelation. He's just repeating it. That's all he does. Because you have that theory, everything in the text ultimately that the Quran becomes, everything in that has to be from Allah only. But if I can look at it and go, obviously not, obviously it's got some things from the Syriac Alexander legend because it's talking about the same very, what's the word? Very eccentric story that it's not like, oh, someone went to the shops and came back again. No, it's about a guy who goes to the ends of the world, sees the sun setting in a muddy pool, either literal or figurative, whatever you want to argue. And then he goes and builds a massive iron wall or iron gate, which is that's historically not true. Like, you wouldn't do that. There's no, like, you look at the Great Wall of China. Is it made of copper and iron? No, it's not. There's pragmatic reasons why that's the case. That's why it sticks out as a unique story, which is why we can validate where it comes from, the Syriac Alexander legends, and it's why it's so clearly being influenced in the Quran. The Quran is taking influence from that story, which is a man-made story. No one thought that was like God beaming that down to people. So it's game over, basically. There's no way there's nothing you can do. And that's why, out of desperation, you see people say things like, well, all these sources actually copied the Quran. Aha, and then they have to give these crazy reimaginings of these sources, actually, rather than the normal scholarly consensus about roughly when they came. They go, no, it came hundreds and hundreds of years later, just because they don't want to accept that the Quran copied from these sources or was influenced by these sources. And I think that's just hilarious. Like, it's funny to watch. It's like, man, this is how bad it's got now. We're now doing like mass historical revisionism in order to like salvage Islam from being shown. I mean, keep in mind, this is just because of this doctrine you have. That if you guys didn't have this doctrine, we couldn't make this argument. But you have this doctrine, which is why we can show very clearly, yeah, this is false. Sorry for the rant there, yep. Chris. Number 2. I was getting carried away.
Valid. It's wonderful. So I'm pretty much done with that. Maybe talk about specific things, but like, obviously Christian, Gnostic, debatable, Greek and Talmudic, pagan, Arab pagan specifically. So the crescent moon and star, the symbol of Islam, actually comes from paganism. This is a pagan symbol of Venus and the moon. So this star here is not literally a star. It's actually the Venus. So if you were to Google Venus moon conjunction, you will see the exact symbol that is on the crescent moon and star of Islam. And this actually predates the Ottomans. The counter is, oh, well, the Ottomans just added it later. No, it goes back before the Ottomans. Anyway, As-Samad is also Arab pagan. It comes from Baal. The Queen of Sheba worshiping the sun is coming from the Talmud. Semen coming from between the backbones and ribs is Greek. The mixing of fluids is Greek and Talmudic. Muta marriage is Persian slash Babylonian slash possibly Talmudic. Houris are Zoroastrian slash pagan, and the saltwater and freshwater mixing. This is Persian and Talmudic, and then the seal of the prophets as well. So there's plus a bunch more. So like so much of your stuff is stolen, and I've actually done a bit more of work on this. So it's actually the lower end is right around 68% is stolen, and the higher end is probably closer to 75%. So I've been saying 70% just as a good round number for people to remember, but it's roughly 70% of the Quran, of the ayah of the Quran, is stolen from previous sources. If you go by word count, it's probably higher than this percentage. But for the verses of the Quran, 70% of them have human influence or human sources influence the revelation. And there's almost 200 ideas that also needs to be updated. So not just 200 verses, but 200 ideas, beliefs stolen in Islam or influenced in Islam from previous human sources. So you have a lot of stuff. And I actually kind of want to go through the Himyar stuff for Surah 85, because in Surah 85, it actually calls Trinitarian Christians true believers of Allah. That's pretty fun. Calls the Christians of Iran true believers. So the people of the trench, the companions of the trench, in Surah 85,
Yemen.
I think 6 through 10. The people of the trench is the Christian massacre of Najran under the Himmerite king of Dunawas. So that's Christians. They are Miaphysite, Trinitarian, Nicene-affirming Christians that are called servants of Allah. So you have that fun thing too. But here's the original links to Muhammad. So the eyes of the leather strap of the anus, God not being a father, child marriage, those type of slaves, remarriage via intercourse with another man. This is in Surah 2. It's also against the Bible. It's literally the opposite of the Bible. Finger licking after eating food, the Garkid tree, the Jizya, satanic verses, Bismillah for this, killing dogs, and severing the order of false prophets. That is all original to Muhammad. John brought up earlier in the chat that I forgot Surah 434, that he legislated wife abuse. There were other societies that already had wife abuse legislated in it, like super far in time. Now, if you're saying that he was original in that, I think it'd be harder to justify it. These things are all highly specific. I guess, you could also say that this is not original, maybe not this as well.
Well,
like
I
the
guess
rest of these, like
with like
every society
434,
believes this.
it's a specific it's a formulation of it, right? So it'd be
That's
if you
true.
fear
Yeah.
rebellion, first
Right.
admonish them, then don't sleep with them, and
Yeah,
then
verbally abuse them. Yeah, withhold
yeah.
intercourse.
But that particular
strike them.
formulation isn't found in like rabbinic stuff or something.
No, not that
Okay.
rabbis don't believe in wife abuse, even in the Talmud. So even at the worst, so like the Talmud is the worst version of Judaism. So like modern Talmud, like modern rabbinic Judaism is not nearly as bad as Talmudic Judaism. Talmudic Judaism, there's a lot of violence in it. Islam is Talmudic Judaism if it got power. I'll say that. They were extremely violent. They were extremely hostile to other groups. Now they never had the power to issue any of these things, but there were rabbis who made statements of like, if you see a Gentile, you gut it like a fish. Like there's some really, really harsh language in the Talmud. The vast majority of it's not that, but there were some radical rabbis in the Talmud. And if you cherry pick your verses from the Talmud, you can get an extremely, extremely brutal version of Judaism that just never got power. So Islam is that, but it has power. And then it adds in all of this other stuff that even the Jews didn't do. These two things, like child marriage is not something in the Talmud. Like, oh, well, there's that passage about you can marry a 3-year-old. That's not what it's saying. That's actually a protection against women who've been raped. And then they don't believe in that either. And then they don't believe in like death for apostasy. Oh, actually, that's not true. There is verses of the Talmud that talk about death for apostasy. But they usually say if an entire city becomes apostate, you are to go in and kill them with the sword. So you're to wipe out a city if they become apostates. But killing dogs and some of these other heinous things, those are original to Muhammad. It's just a special flavor of it. But here's more of the stuff that is stolen on Judgment Day. So you have the trumpet blasts. You have the angels writing books of good deeds and bad deeds on your shoulders, and those good and bad books being judged on the scales of Allah. That God then tilts the scales to make it easier for people to get into the garden. That those who study the book slash follow the book will be saved. Those who study the Quran will be saved. And then not entering into God's presence as one group, but separated into different groups. Idols of witnesses, we went over that. If you deny the resurrection of the dead, or if you deny the book, you're going to hell. The Torah given to every people group. God not being a tyrant on the day of judgment. That exact wording is found in the Quran. The test on the judgment day for those who don't believe. The temporary hellfire punishments is talked about in the Quran, but it says that the Jews believe this, but that's not the reality. So it's not an affirmation, but it does actually address rabbinic culture and belief as a thing that's happening. And then you have the black faces on the for the people of Gehenna or Jehannam on Judgment Day. That's also from the Talmud. You have in Jannah the four rivers of paradise with the specific contents of each river, the fruits. The Garden of Eden being literally paradise in heaven, not on earth, but literally a heavenly Garden of Eden. You have that. You have intercourse in the Garden of Eden, kind of. This is not a slam dunk case for the intercourse in the Garden of Eden, but you can make a case. Like if you were to sloppily read the Talmud in these sections, you would actually come away with essentially hories. Maybe he got it from Jews. I think he much more likely got it from his own desires, especially because he describes them as children and he had a thing for children. So like hories are 9 to 11-year-olds. So none of the societies around there would have accepted that. Even in the Zoroastrian sources in the Avesta, they have it as 15. They actually give a name. They give a number to the age of the girls. They say, oh, these girls are 15 years old and they're beautiful and they have swelling breasts. So they have a much more not pedophilic version of it than what Muhammad had. So maybe it's a mixture of things. It's hard to say for that last one, but these ones are very clearly attested to in the Jewish sources and also in the Christian sources. You have the boiling water of hellfire and the eating of the fruit of a tree of hellfire. The language around the blaze, the resurrection, sleep being a form of death, dreams being a form of prophecy, all the stuff with Jibril and the four archangels, those are pretty similar. The demonology slash genealogy is very, very similar. The stuff with Adam and Eve not bowing down to Iblis or Iblis not bowing down to them, all the other stuff with the Garden of Eden, all of that is from the previous sources. You have the Quran being made before the universe. In the Islamic source in the Hadith, it's 50,000 years. I think in the Jewish source, it was like 10,000 years. So there's a difference in the number of years, but it's like thousands of years before God made the earth and heaven. He created the book through which all things were made. So it was used to create the universe. It contains all future events. It was given to all people groups in their language. It was delivered each generation by successive prophets. It was given by Jibril specifically to the people. And then prophets sent to all nations. Prophecy was taken away, but will return at the end times. And I think Muhammad thought he was one of those end times prophets. So we get the end times prophets in like Sota 48b and in Sanhedrin and Bamdabir Rabbah. So you have as well the justice and mercy language, including the names of Allah, the attributes of Allah. That's from the Jewish sources. You have the sperm drop, so the mixed fluid stuff, abrogation coming from, this one's weaker. The abrogation's weaker, but you might get abrogation. The Kaaba might actually come from a mixture of Jewish and Christian sources. I made a video on that if you want to check it out. Shirk, kafir, obviously, heretic stuff, apostate laws, divine cancel. These are all very obvious whenever you read the sources. And then God not getting weary from creating the universe is actually from the Jewish sources as well. So this is Better Shit Rabbah 10.9. So the whole polemic that for like, oh, well, the Quran is consciously editing the Bible because in the Bible, he gets tired. He needs rest. In the Quran, he doesn't get weary from creating. It's like, oh, well, actually, that just comes from the Jews. The Jews already believe that. The Jews already taught that from a book that they're copying from already. So it's like, oh, most of the stuff they bring up for the conscious edits are actually just things from human-made sources, which Muhammad copied. All the stuff with Adam, all the stuff with Noah, all the stuff with Abraham, all the stuff with Cain, Abel, all the stuff with Jacob and Joseph and Moses, all the stuff with Solomon and Korah's wealth, the seven heavens, the 24 months of nursing, embryology, the mixing of fluids, Allah having two right hands is actually from Jewish sources because they interpret the passage from the Exodus whenever they're singing the Song of the Sea, so Miriam's song. They say, "By your right hand, Lord, you've destroyed the enemy. By your right hand, Lord, you've dashed them against the rocks." They take that double right hand phrase as God having two right hands.
Okay,
And they
that's
say
one way of doing it.
whenever the people are following the will of God, God has two right hands. Whenever they're not following the will of God, he has two left hands. So he causes his left hand to become a right hand, or he causes his right hand to become a left hand. So he's just double-sided. So it's pretty fun. Hating those who are wasteful. Esau. So Isa is obviously not the name in Arabic for Jesus. It's Yasu or Yasua. Esau was an insult that Jews gave to Jesus. So they called Christians Edomites, which are the sons of Esau, and they called Jesus Esau as an insult because he's not from the line of Jacob. He's not from the line of the Jews. So as an insult to Jesus, for him not to be a Jew, they call him Esau. I don't think he knew that Esau wasn't actually Jesus' name and called him Isa.
Yeah. Well, I've been, there's this some thought that
the Syriac idea, yeah.
Was it
the Syriac idea is just weaker in my opinion.
Wait. Jesus. So the Quran, there are two verses in the Quran, 345 and 4157, where it talks about Jesus, Isa, in a way that it calls him the Messiah, but
his name is Messiah.
His name is Messiah. Yeah. So 345 it literally says name Messiah, which is
right.
No, it's
stupid.
But the Quran like has a habit of doing this for multiple different things. It seems to think a lot of people's there's an argument to be made. The Quran author thinks the Pharaoh of Moses is just that's his name. Like he's just called Pharaoh. That's his name. But based on there's no definitive article like Al Faroon or whatever it would be. It would be
right.
It just says it as if it's a name. And likewise, when we look at 4:157, and it says, I think that's the right verse, and it talks about the Jews boasting that they killed the Messiah, is weird because you kind of have to interpret that as they're just being tongue in cheek. Like the Quran author, and he's portraying them as they're pretending they're being sarcastic for effect when they say that they haha, we killed the Messiah. Isn't that great? Because that's not what the Jews would actually say, right? The Jews wouldn't boast about killing their own Messiah. That's ludicrousness. So they must be saying it in jest.
Right.
But the other way I'm looking at it is no, the Quran author just thinks that that's actually what his name is. So the Jews are just saying, yeah, we killed Messiah, that guy. Who was, it's really weird, but the Quran has a funny relationship with names, and it seems to suggest that a lot of these
doesn't know him very well.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, that's the takeaway.
You would think God would know the names of people in history, but
you mean Pharaoh wasn't called Pharaoh? I thought he was called Pharaoh. I thought that was his name.
No, not. Yeah, Jesus wasn't the nephew of Moses and Aaron. So
yeah, that's another. And Saul and Gideon. That's another.
There's a lot of fun. Anyway, so there's also an argument for Isa coming from the Syriac, because in Syriac, if you swap the last letter to the first letter, you get something akin to Isa instead of Yasu. But I think it because it's the exact same word as Esau. So, and then we actually have a Jewish source from the mid 600s that actually calls Jesus Isa directly, and calls the Christians Edomites. So they make fun of those who worship Esau. So it's I mean, I could definitely see how he heard the name Esau from the Jews, because he's primarily talking to Jews the whole time. So he heard it from the Jews as a polemic, didn't recognize that it was a polemic, and then ended up adding the polemic as the name of Jesus even though he's supposed to be like honoring him and praising him and loving him. So there's debate on that for sure. You can go down the different sides of it, but currently I stand on the side of it was a polemic that he misunderstood and added as if it's true. But you can look up at the other sources. Mary Harb disagrees with me, so me and her actually talked about this before. But you can look at the different scholarly perspectives on it. That's my current belief.
Interesting.
I will
So
judgment if I get.
So we've hit the 2 hour mark. We've got some super chats that you probably want to.
Yeah. I will quickly go through the rest of these for people just to get like the depth of it. Then we'll go through the super chats and can end it.
Okay.
So you have Jews becoming apes. That's in the Jewish sources actually. The Sabbath breakers are turned into apes. It's actually from the Jews. Even numbers being bad. The angels around the throne. The Shahad, like the 5 pillars, are actually extremely Jewish. All of their prayer practices, the Zabiba, Zakat, Zom, Hajj, all of this stuff. There's actually even like Hebrew cognates, like Zom is Zom, Hajj is Hag, Zakat is Zakat, Selah is Salah, then Shahada is Sahadutha. So it's like exactly the same. The practices of wives, even having 4 wives, like the number of wives being limited to 4, comes from the Talmud because that's the number of weeks in a month, and you're supposed to have at least 1 week per wife per month, so you can only have up to 4. So that's why Muhammad in Surah 4 is like, oh, you can have up to 4. That's likely from the rabbinic version of it. Wife being tilths that you can go into however you want. There's descriptions of that within the Talmud. The number of witnesses you need for a crime, not revealing the sins of a brother, Ramadan possibly. That's a very. I'll make a video on Ramadan, but Ramadan itself is likely from Jewish sources as well. But that is it. Oh, also the pooping and peeing, like the whole idea of the torture of the grave is mostly because of pee. You have something akin to that, not exactly that, but you have something akin to that in the Jewish.
How on earth to you understand that as a Muslim? You know, most torture that people go through in the grave is because of urine-related incidences.
Yes.
It's not because of adultery. It's not because of murder. It's
No.
Thievery.
No.
Not even usury or like not even alcohol.
Nah.
Not even alcohol. It's because of you improper
on your pants.
Also, isn't there like a thing that when you die, you defecate or urinate or something? Like, isn't that kind of like a bit of like if that's the case, isn't that kind of like poetically terrible? You know, like you're going to be punished for how you what you did with urine. By the way, when you die, you're probably gonna I don't know. It just seems silly, really silly to me.
Yeah. So Jacob having 4 wives is not actually the reason why there's a 4-wife limit. That's a misconception. If you actually go through the sources, it's not that. Nick is one of my Muslim viewers who is kind of a Gnostic Muslim. He's an interesting fellow. He also thinks the Hadith are garbage. And I was like, yeah, but he basically affirms all religions, but also is like a Muslim. He's an interesting dude. But we have a bunch of super chats. We have some jewels, like cents. We have Randy again gifting both of us memberships. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. I remember yesterday. Thank you.
Yes. And then Kafar sent me some things, and you have a new member.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Oh,
that.
Great. Thank you so much.
And he also gifted a membership.
Oh, and he gifted as well. Thank you. I still need to figure out what all this stuff is, but thank you so much. I'm such a noob at like YouTube
gifted,
at this point.
He extended his membership as well. So then he also gifted another membership.
That's you.
Yeah. Oh no, he did for me. Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, brother. So he became both of our members and also gifted members for both of us. And then Pol has this. So after Chris's Talmud finishes his book, after Chris Talmud finishes his book, you two can do a website called Islamic Dilemma Central with Talmud, Islamic Dilemma, and Bible Islamic Dilemma sections. I'm already making that. And we are already kind of including Chris's book in it, which I think I asked you a while ago if I could do that, and you said yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember. So I'm
not.
I think I remember. No. Yeah. I got I got David Suarez's permission to use his book for the Dilemma Vault, but we currently have like 50 different types of dilemmas in there. And then I'm gonna have all of the Talmudic dilemma sources. We're gonna have all of the Islamic dilemma sources. We've made our own Quran reader, which has a custom translation of the Arabic of the Quran based on an updated Palmer. So it's gonna be open source. You can paste it, not to worry about copyright. And then it is much more honest. There's no lying when it comes to like, uh, you know, abusing your wives or any of the other passages that Muslims always mistranslate. And it's going to have extensive footnotes of every single problem of the Quran. So every contradiction, every time Allah is evil, every time there's broken theology, every time there's broken sentences, because we're going to have notes on the Arabic and the quality of the Arabic too. And we're also going to have every single original source. So whenever you're reading a section of the Talmud, and we're going to even have it to where you can read the original only Quran. So it's the 30% that's original to Muhammad. We're going to have just that. So you can read just that and see what is original to him. And whenever you do that, it's like, oh, it's all the warfare. It's him, doing things with his wives and all the other nonsense, and him establishing his own power and all that. So exciting things ahead. But we have 100 joules sent as a high five. Thank you, brother. Of free the fingies. Josie sent to your channel.
That's funny. Oh, thank you so much.
And then I can't tell why Islam is so stupid. That was for you. And then also for you, God made the union of men and women a holy and good thing in the covenant of marriage, but the preoccupation of these Middle Eastern and Eastern philosophies with weird intimacy stuff is icky.
Yeah. Very much so.
If you've ever gone through the Hindu and the Buddhist stuff on intercourse,
I feel like the Buddhist stuff would be interesting.
They wrote the Kama Sutra.
Exactly, right? So,
yeah.
And I don't know much at all about that other than like what pop culture says about it. But
it is accurate.
Oh, it is accurate. Okay.
It's accurate. Yeah. So in Buddha, I don't know if we want to go through this, but real quick, in Buddhism, kama is the word for pleasure, and you have kama avoidant Buddhist and you have kama seeking Buddhist. The kama seeking Buddhist are usually Tibetan, and they specifically do things to pleasure themselves. So they do tantric practices where they get high for hours at a time, or where they have intercourse for hours at a time. So they'll do tantric yoga, which is basically them having like 5 to 7 hour intercourse sessions with each other and sometimes with animals. But you have
always
a lot of stuff with that.
Some words. Yeah, also with animals.
The Hindus are the worst with it. Their iconography is deeply all over the place. There's one section where I think it was Shiva, but he becomes a giant golden phallus and then starts destroying the world because he gets really, really upset that he can't satisfy himself. And then one of the deities becomes a giant female receptor and then captures him. And then he is able to release himself and then stop destroying the world. And that's like the most tame story when it comes to intimacy within Hinduism.
Okay, fun story time with Chris number 2. Next week he'll be telling us about some ancient Greek stories to do with.
Oh, there's some good ones in there.
Man, I can imagine. The party doesn't end. Buddy the Rabbit. Like I'm so tired of reading about weird Middle Eastern and Eastern foot stuff and menses and fluid form fingernails and how feet represented fertility. Like you, yeah. This is this is a lot of like horrible weird stuff, man.
Economicon
says Dr. Robert Kerr has a hypothesis that Dul Karnain is actually Moses who has horns imitating from his head in Jerome's translation of the Old Testament, the Vulgate, which fits the Quranic context. That's very interesting. I actually met Dr. Robert Kerr. He went to the NAPC conference in 2024. Really awesome guy. Really cool guy to hang out with and just listen to some of the stuff that he thinks. Really enjoy meeting him. That's interesting. I haven't heard that, so I'll have to investigate.
I have not heard that either. I have an English translation of the Vulgate, and it's a Vulgate, not Vulgata. So that's a little typo for people who are interested.
Yeah,
It's the Latin
I was gonna
translation
say
of the Bible.
the Vulgate is always how I've known it, so I was like Vulgata. That's interesting.
Yeah. Then you have Chris has to let the Gog, so that the Gog can Magog the Gog for the Magog.
Chris, you have to let the Gog Magog. Wait, hang on. Chris, you have to let the Gog the Gog, so that the Gog can Magog the Gog for the Magog. 100%. 100%. We need to let that happen.
Indeed, Gog the Magog of your Magog.
Oh my gosh, it goes again. The Gog the Magog of your Magog. Indeed, Magog and Gog Magog, Gog. Indeed, none can recite a surah like this. Indeed.
Indeed.
Thank you, both of you, by the way.
Happy food. Yeah. So that's the Talmudic dilemma. Summarized. The full presentation is about 10 hours. We did not go through it all. But
I think that was like the good strong points. You went into some great detail with examples. I think that was really, really good. Obviously it's huge and people can investigate this to no end because there's so much content there that can be discovered, which is really, really cool. And I'm really glad that you're discovering all of this and you're writing it all down for us so we don't have to do all of the hard work. Thank you very much. But yeah, I look forward to reading your book. Look forward to getting my hands on it. And yeah, you said it's going to be free online. Is that how you're publishing it?
It's going to be paid for the book, but all of the material in the book will be free online.
Okay, that's how. Okay. So, yeah, right. Okay, that makes sense. Cool, nice. Put it on Amazon or something, and I will buy a copy, and then I will insist that you hand sign it, and then pay for first class international delivery straight to me, so I can have my own copy of it.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. Appreciate it. Appreciate Chris for doing the streams with me. This has been fun.
Anytime.
Yeah. Islam is Judaism to Electric Boogaloo. Muhammad was a wannabe rabbi, and stay away from Islam.
God bless you all.